Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight is going to be a night with two shows, both Green candidates. So my first guest is a New Jersey Green who is running for state senate against the establishment piece of shit shill, Bob Menendez. So this is Madelyn Hoffman. She
Yeah.
is an activist and also running for Green Party State Senate. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me, Joy. And let me just clarify a little. It's in the state of New Jersey, but it's for U.S. Senate. It's to serve
Right.
down in Washington, D.C.
My bad.
But
You are correct.
otherwise, everything was right on. Yeah.
Well, that's good as a journalist. I'm like a few away from 100 candidates, so it all
Yes.
kinds of
Yeah.
tends to blur a little. Uh,
Right. I can
but
understand that. Yeah.
No, one of our teammates who's also running in New Jersey as Green, Diane Moxley,
Yes.
recommended you. So I adore Diane. So I checked out your site and I knew I wanted to have you.
All right.
It's
Thank you.
very apparent that you didn't just become an activist after Trump, which,
Absolutely not. Right.
yeah, a lot of people are did. And
Mm.
better late than never, but I like to interview candidates who have long fought. So can you explain your experience and how you got started in activism?
Well, okay, I'll do my best. I've been at this for 40 years now, so right out of college, I became a Vista volunteer in the Ironbound section of Newark. And as a Vista volunteer, I was just working in a community school for a while until we started to hear about a lot of toxic chemical pollution in the Ironbound section of Newark. I don't know if anyone will have remembered chemical control, the chemical control fire in Elizabeth, but this was going back many years now, around 1981 or 82. And it was one of those fires that burned out of control for quite some time. It was in a warehouse with toxic waste stored illegally. And it sort of triggered for us in the Ironbound concern about what might be in already stored or hidden from plain sight in the Ironbound. And so we started something called the Ironbound Committee Against Toxic Waste with two purposes: to keep to deal with what toxic waste were already in Ironbound, and then to try to keep out proposals for something new. And that started around 1982 or 83. And so from 1983 to 1998, I was working not only with groups in the Ironbound section of Newark, but also groups all over the state, because New Jersey has the nation's highest number of Superfund sites, had then and still has now. And so at one time, I sort of joked about writing a guidebook to New Jersey's toxic waste sites, exit by exit on the Garden State Parkway and exit by exit on the New Jersey Turnpike, because the state is loaded with toxic chemical pollution. And so that, having done that, I probably worked with over 200 citizens groups and about maybe 10, maybe 20 municipalities dealing with that issue from 1993 to 1998. And right around 1996, I was asked by the Green Party in New Jersey if I wanted to run with Ralph Nader, because he was contemplating a run. The state of California had invited him to run in California. And so in 1996, I became Ralph Nader's vice presidential running mate here in New Jersey, based on that 15-year history of working on environmental issues. And then 1997, I ran for governor of New Jersey as a Green, just on my own. In 1998, I ran for U.S. Congress. So that's how I kind of got involved in working as an activist on pollution issues, not, open space environmental issues, which is something I believe in too, but mostly what happens in cities, urban areas, rural areas where where companies dump stuff or store stuff that can cause a problem for the community around them.
That's amazing. I'm in Pennsylvania, so we, have ridiculous amounts of pipelines and, you know,
Yes.
it's sad. So you, as I said, you are running against Bob Menendez, who is a totally piece of garbage. And were you one of the protesters that was there last weekend?
You and where in Jersey City?
Where
When
he was
Hillary
having his like bajillion-dollar
Yes,
fundraiser?
yes, I was one of the protesters because, of course, as a candidate, as the Green Party candidate uh, against him and against Bob Hugin, it appalled me that two things appalled me. One, that Hillary Clinton was coming in to campaign for him, even if if it was a freebie, if it was I'm just coming in and I'm going to stump for you and I'm not going to raise any money for you. Even that would have appalled me because since from 2000 until 2018 June, I've been an activist on peace and justice issues, the director of a nonprofit peace organization. So Hillary Clinton and her views on war, her views on Libya and Gaddafi, we came, we saw, he died. I mean, how tone deaf can somebody be who's supposed to be in the State Department or a Secretary of State? So even if there were no fundraising going on, I would have been appalled at her coming out to campaign for Senator Menendez. But they then had a dinner where each plate cost $5,400. And if you weren't quite so well off, you could buy a plate for $2,700. And then if you were a little bit less well off, $1,000 for dinner, and then maybe 500, and a few odds and ends there for 250 for select friends. It was outrageous. How out of touch is that with the people of New Jersey and the needs that we all have? And if we could have taken one plate for $5,400, it would have, you know, purchased so many lawn signs and a few commercial ads and such. And it was just appalling. So the combination of the amount of money each plate cost and the fact that it was Hillary Clinton, just, we had to do something when came to town, when she came to town. And we did, and we had money heads, the billionaires for Menendez, I guess, billionaires for Clinton and Menendez, the heads made out of money. And then we also had a big sign that said "Tax the Rich," trying to greet them appropriately. Yeah.
That's awesome because something I usually ask my candidates is
Mm-hmm.
if Hillary won, would you be protesting her? Maybe for different reasons, but would you be? And quite often they say no. And that's a
Mm,
problem because
yes.
we should be. she
Well, mhm.
has, she's evil. So that's awesome that you protested her.
Yeah, it was a little bit, I was working for a nonprofit peace organization, and it was a little bit unpopular to be against Hillary Clinton. I didn't say much. As a director of a nonprofit, I needed to be quiet on such things, nonpartisan, to just jeopardize the nonprofit status. But I couldn't have voted for her. I didn't vote for her. And I still don't completely understand people I know who are activists who think that she would have been a better alternative. Or even, it's not even that she would be a better alternative, that she would be somebody that you would want to vote for because of her
Being a woman.
every yeah, oh, that's, I guess you're right. That's kind of because she's a woman, many people would give her more of a pass. One thing I did during the campaign in 2016, there was a picture of her with Henry Kissinger, and they were embracing one another. And at
Yeah.
one point, Hillary Clinton said that she was so glad to have the endorsement of Henry Kissinger, and Henry Kissinger considered her one of the best secretaries of state, and so on. And so I just posted it as an issue on the issue of war and said on my personal page, and I said, "Oh, here we go. Here's what kind of endorsement is this?" And I had people commenting on my page saying, "Oh, you should give him and her a break. He's an older man. He's been at it a long time. You're picking on her." I thought, what is going on here? Henry Kissinger, widely considered a war criminal around the world. And some people here were saying that it was okay for Hillary Clinton to, to promote him and be hugged by him and praise him. And not here, not here.
No, I mean it's very comparable to when, you know, me too, but oh, her husband accused
Mm,
by 14 women. Totally
mm,
cool. As long
mm,
I noticed it's as long as you have a D next to your name, things are
mm,
kind of allowed. Um,
mm.
and I see so much vote shaming. I wrote a really big article about it.
Oh, you
It's
did.
horrible. I wrote Bernie in, so I get shit. I'm sure you get shit as a
Mm.
green. How, it's incredible. How do you as a candidate deal with this cognitive dissonance of people saying like it's your fault?
Well, I'll tell you, I have a mentor in that department, and that is Diane Moxley, because she has fielded that for a longer time than I. I mean, I did when I was running in the 90s. I had to deal with it, but I was out of that kind of loop for 20 years. And Diane taught me a couple of ways to address it. One is that nobody owns our votes, though the Democrats act as if every single vote that they received from a voter belongs to them and can't be shared anywhere else. So that's one. You either you earn my vote or you don't. You don't own the vote. So that's one. Secondly, there are so many things that both the Democrats and Republicans need to own up to. But the Democrats in particular, we keep replaying the 2016 election over and over again, and we've gotten this explanation that it was Russia's meddling with our election that affected it, and Hillary, other people will blame Bernie Sanders for throwing things out of whack. And I just say, why don't you look, like I said, both the Democrats and Republicans have to look at themselves in the mirror. They have to see what it is that they are not offering the American public, because for 40 years, all of my voting life, there are certain things that people have wanted and needed that neither party has delivered, no matter who was who had the majority in the Congress and who was in the presidency. So that's where so much of this lies. And if we had a system whereby you could go into the voting booth, the ranked choice voting, for example, and you could vote for your top two choices or your top three choices, and if we'd had that 40 years ago, the country would be in such a different place now than I believe it would be, because people would have said, heck no, we don't want to vote for these candidates. And in New Jersey right now with Hugan and Menendez and the debate that happened 2 nights ago, there's virtually no excitement about it, but it's, we're going through the motions. People are going to go and vote dutifully, vote Democrat or vote Republican, if that wherever their party loyalties are. But they're so uninspired by either candidate. So, something really has to change. And so when I get the spoiler argument or charge or insult, or the one that's harder than that is, well, you're not a viable party. So if you're not viable, why do you put your name out there? All you're doing is deflecting votes to somebody else. No, what we're doing is building a movement and a political party in a country that's rigged not to allow a third political party to flourish. And we're doing our best to represent what people really want, voices of, if you use the word marginalized, voices of the homeless, voices of the immigrant, voices of Black Lives Matter, voices of the disabled, voices, I can go down the list of the people who don't feel they're being, or the 99% for that matter, people who don't feel they're being represented by the mainstream political parties. So in that case, I have a responsibility and an obligation to run, to try to create something better. So thank you, Diane Moxley, for helping me to get that.
Yes, we love you, Diane. You're amazing. Um, that's what's so fascinating about the vote shaming thing, because it's interesting that you would, blame people also running simply because they, like, I wrote in Bernie and people give me shit, but they don't understand that if I didn't, I still wouldn't have voted for Hillary. They think that they took their votes. No, most people who voted for Jill would not have voted if she wasn't running. So there seems to be this like illogical, concept. But also, as far as Greens or any one third party goes, the great thing about you guys running is that the people running are inadvertently forced to kind of open up to more like leftist ideas so they can compete with other, you know what I mean? Like we saw it happen with Bernie. Hillary finally started like, okay, maybe $12 an hour, they're kind of forced to start opening their mind at least a little. So that's really advantageous as well. I already know the answer to this, but for our viewers, they let you join the debate.
No, they did not. The debate was Wednesday, and it was just Menendez and Hugin. Today, I was asked to be on a show called On the Record, which is moderated by one of the same people who moderated the debate. So I had 7.5 minutes, and the Libertarian had seven and a half minutes. Not good enough, not acceptable, but I wasn't going to pass up that opportunity. On Tuesday, though, we're going to have our own debate that will have invited all the candidates, but Menendez and Hugin have not replied, and there'll be four candidates for U.S. Senate, independent candidates for U.S. Senate, who will be participating in a conversation about the issues that Hugin and Menendez, whatever issues there weren't very many from what I saw of those debates. I wish that Menendez would have moved on some of the issues of war and peace. He has not budged. The only time I've seen him and Hugin in person since July, or since June when I started this race, is on the streets of a town called Rutherford, where on Labor Day there's a street fair and festival, and all the candidates come out because it's Labor Day. So I kind of deliberately bumped into them on the street. But that's the only time I've seen them. And there's one issue, because they run away. They don't want to participate. They don't want to participate in anything where the Greens are or other independents are. They don't show up, which shows an arrogance and a conceit to me that why don't you want to be questioned? Why don't you want people to hear another point of view? What are you so afraid of? So on the issues of war and peace, Senator Menendez, that was the main reason I chose to run against him, because working for a peace organization, I was so frustrated at his positions. He receives the largest amount of political action committee money of any senator from AIPAC, which is the American Israeli Political Action Committee, and also another organization, a PAC called NORPAC. So he gets so much money from the pro-Israeli lobby so that he basically represents Israel in this U.S. Senate. And Israel's agenda, and we all, most people, most of your listeners are probably aware of that the Great March of Return that's been taking place in Gaza since March of this year, and every Friday there are more Palestinians who are just shot in cold blood, if you will, from the IDF on the other side of this arbitrary fence they built. So we've had medics, we've had journalists, we've had children, teenagers, 12-year-olds, babies, shot and killed at this fence, and there has not been a single word out of Senator Menendez in regard to that. Not a single word. And the other place where the bombs are dropping, and there's not a single word out of Menendez either, is Yemen. And the United States has been selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. And you may remember this summer when a bomb dropped on a busload of school children, Yemeni school children, killing 40 or 41 of them. Was there a peep out of Senator Menendez? No. And for my part, in our campaign, we kept going at it. Why haven't you said a word? Why haven't you said a word? And of course he hasn't. He hasn't said a word because he said, "Well, I'm not sure about continuing to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia." This was in a letter he sent out a few months ago. He said, "But I need more information before I decide whether or not to block the arms sales." More information? More information about what? People are dying. There's 13 million who are either experiencing famine or on the brink. UN and other organizations call it the worst humanitarian disaster. And Senator Menendez is on the fence. So I really had hoped that this campaign would move him. Maybe it will move him aside and it will it'll allow me to become the U.S. Senator from New Jersey. But without that, still, we need people. We've continued to build momentum against that war, pushing Senator Menendez to take a stand, pushing him and Bob Hugin to take a stand on what's happening in Gaza, but to no avail. And I don't know. We keep doing it. And that's why what you said earlier about being an activist before, and I'm going to continue to be an activist no matter what happens. And this is not a Trump versus the Democrats issue at all, because Senator Menendez, Senator Booker, all the U.S. senators just recently voted. I think we talked about this last week. You did.
For the war budget increase.
For the war budget, yeah. Only Bernie Sanders voted against it.
Billion. What's that?
Only Senator Sanders and 6 Republicans voted against it, but in the Senate,
Republicans voted against it.
Yeah, in the Senate.
Democrats.
No, and that's Senator Menendez or Senator Cory Booker. Yeah.
Or Kamala, Elizabeth Warren, all these progressive darlings. Yeah. But I mean, Bernie's an independent, so
right.
But as far as the Democrats, it's it's fascinating. And Bernie is coming out with his second edition of the to stop the arms sales in Yemen this month. The first one did not get passed. He revamped it. They're going to vote. He's presenting it to Congress next week. This is going to be really important to see how people vote. because
before the election.
that it's scheduled before Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, before the election. So this is going to be that could be advantageous for us. I
Yeah,
hope.
definitely. Well,
So,
if only to, right, as you said before, to drive a wedge in there and to call these senators out, and particularly Senator Menendez. I mean, for me particularly, to call him out. He's the ranking minority member of the Foreign Relations Committee, so he's right there. He could make a difference if he wanted to, and he brags instead about bringing some new F-35 trucks or something to a military base down in South Jersey. He brags about that as, one of his many accomplishments. But to see the whole thing, all the Democrats, I think Diane spoke about Tom Malinowski,
mhm.
who she's one of her opponents, and about his NSA background or CIA NSA background, I believe. And he was he created a loophole or spoke about a loophole to keep torture, as an active possibility. But more than that, he had Madeleine Albright come out to campaign for him. And we remember Madeleine Albright is the
Oh,
one
yes.
who answered Leslie Stahl by saying 500,000 Iraqi children dead because of our sanctions. Yeah, it's a tough one, but the price is worth it to destabilize Saddam Hussein. So, who are these people? Parading as, I mean, not parading, Democrat, Republican on war. They're just there's no difference. No, and
Mhm.
so, yeah, so
Well,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I remember when Hillary was being asked about Iraq, and she said it's a good business opportunity. Like
I
that's
mean,
what we're dealing with. They talk about the Republicans talk about the Democrats, and nobody's talking about the issues.
well, and it's even worse. The early part of this interview, you talked about vote shaming, and a lot of that was going on, but it wasn't only vote shaming, it was issue shaming.
Absolutely.
When we raised the issue of the war and the military budget right after all the Democratic Party senators voted for it, and 75% of the reps in the House of Representatives who were Democrat voted for it, people said it's a distraction. Why do you keep bringing up the military issue? It's a distraction. We have to worry about climate change. We have to worry about Supreme Court nominees. It's a distraction when more than 50% of the discretionary budget goes to the military. It's a distraction when people's homes are being destroyed all over the world. And then when people rightfully want to leave because they're afraid of the bombs and they try to come here, nope, nope, you can't come here. And that was under Barack Obama, too. It's not just under Trump. A lot of local politicians say, oh, no, you can't come here. But we just destroyed their homes. Don't you get it? Don't we have a responsibility? No. So the war and the wars, they're not a distraction. They touch on every single part of our lives. If we were spending less on wars, we'd have more for health care, a national health care plan, improved Medicare for all. We would have more for education. We could embark on a nationwide tuition-free college program and student loan forgiveness and all that. We could do that, but we're so obsessed with wars for resources, not for anything altruistic, for resources. Uh, we if we got off of fossil fuels too, that would have an impact on how much we needed to go
Absolutely.
to war. So you see, you hit a sensitive spot there.
No, you are so right on.
Mm.
And people's comments they're totally with you. Um,
Okay.
So yeah, you're definitely going to have to read the comments after the show because people, my friend Jenna said, "Can we have one of her in PA?" So that's good. Um,
I'll clone.
has Ralph talked to you about your campaign? Has he, come to see you or endorsed you or?
No, I have to keep trying. Ralph Nader. You mean Ralph Nader, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know why, but I will try again. I know he's a very busy person.
right.
I will try again. I did, though, just get the endorsement from CFAR.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Awesome.
yeah, they just today. I don't I filled in the paperwork last night. That's the for against plutocracy, citizens against
Yes.
plutocracy. Um and Jill Stein endorsed, but Ralph Nader, no, not yet. Maybe this will help. Does he watch
Yeah,
the
I'm
Real
sure he
Progressives?
watches. Hey,
I would
Ralph, if
love
you're
I
watching.
would love his endorsement. He taught me a whole lot about the two parties with one corporate head, and so I would love his endorsement. And I am really so grateful that I have a chance to run 20 years later, actually 22 years later after running with him in 1996. Um, for a long time, I was kind of, especially on the issue of Israel and Palestine and Yemen and some of these wars overseas, even though I was working for a peace organization, had to kind of tread lightly on certain things. And now I can just open the doors and say, this is wrong. We have to do something about this.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to, for the first time, really, since, I mean, well, of course, Bernie in 2016, but for the first time to see even like local people running and stuff just speaking so real and
Hmm.
so not like they're on CNN. Like they'll drop F bombs and stuff like that.
Right.
And I love it. I relish in that because it shows you guys are just us. You're,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, which is amazing. You touched lightly on healthcare.
Hmm.
What is your stance on what you'd like to see in, well, what you'll fight for in New Jersey, but also what you'd like to see as a nation?
Well, first I'll preface it by saying that I'm so disgusted with what Senator Menendez and Bob Hugin keep doing around healthcare. They keep bashing one another about the cost of cancer drugs, and it is important to keep drug prices low. I get it. I understand it. But it's in the context of either the Affordable Care Act or the Trump Care, whatever the Republicans will propose. And neither one of those is going to address our problems. So that's one reason I'm upset about being excluded from the debate. And one of the reasons I'm so upset that Diana's excluded from the debate, because Malinowski and Leonard Lance, were doing basically the same thing, arguing about what's in the periphery. Like, okay, how can we keep that price lower? How can we keep that one low? Instead of saying, let's implement improved Medicare for all, a single payer system, so that we can get the 38 million or 39 million people who are still not insured, get them all insured, save us trillions of dollars over the next number of years. I think the Koch brothers were astounded when they did a report on single payer, and they were expecting, for the results to say it's going to be so much more money and so much more expensive, and then they found out that it would save, I think, $2 trillion over
Oh
the
my God, yeah.
next 10 years or something. And the Koch brothers didn't want the study to come up with that conclusion. But
Absolutely.
yeah, so we had Dr. Margaret Flowers, come into New Jersey in September and talk to us about what single payer improved Medicare for all would look like. And if you take out the copays and you take out the premiums and you take out the out of pocket I I've been on the Affordable Care Act since it started, I guess 7 years ago, and it says affordable, but it really isn't. And I don't even know. Basically, I would have some coverage if I needed to go to a doctor, maybe and for catastrophic coverage. But my out-of-pocket expenses and deductibles are so high that most of it I would have to pay out of my own pocket before the insurance would kick in. So I understand that the prices are too high, but the solution isn't to replace it with something else that looks like it. The solution is to replace it with single payer, improved Medicare for all, and we can all breathe a whole lot easier because we all have coverage. We don't have to worry about whether to put food on the table or go to the doctor, and especially in the lower income areas where people really are struggling to make ends meet and probably don't go to the doctors if they because they opt to put dinner on the table. So I'm completely and totally in support of a genuine, real healthcare for all kind of program, not this stuff. And how could the Affordable Care Act be called universal health care? It's a joke. It's a joke.
But wasn't it nice of Obama to come out in favor of it now? It just
Yeah,
melted my heart.
but
It
then
was
he yeah, it was, but then he talked about it as being something new, a new idea, and then he talked about it without putting the word improved in front of it because there are things that need to be changed to make it better. Um, but yeah, a little bit of gamesmanship there, right? Making the Democrats sound like they really are in favor of this, which and they're not, going all the way back to Hillary Clinton in 1992 when she was supposed to deliver a universal health care plan for everyone. I,
mhm.
the rhetoric on it has gotten so. Her rhetoric was universal health care, and she backed off it in like 3 months. And then Obama's was some other, I forget what the
Hillary
language he
Care.
used. Hillary
Oh,
Claire, Hillary
Hillary
Claire.
Care. Hmm.
I didn't fall for it that time because it was watered down from what she put forward, and she couldn't hold on to it. So, um, but oh yeah, and I'm just remembering something I read about a month ago, or it was something from the Democratic Party, I believe, and it said even though 70% of the public, when polled, is in favor of a national health care plan, don't bring it up, Democrats, when you're debating, because 100% of our donors disagree with it. And so I failed to mention earlier that the campaign, the chief staff person for Senator Menendez' reelection campaign, lobbies for at least three different entities. One, Blue Cross Blue Shield. So if you ever say anything about single payer, improved Medicare for all in front of Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's going to fall on deaf ears. We know that. He also, this staff person for the reelection campaign, also lobbies for the Penn East pipeline. And the Penn East pipeline is going to go from your state of Pennsylvania into central Jersey. And every town along the way, both in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, has voted against it. We all want to get off fossil fuels, or many want to get off fossil fuels. We need to fight climate change. We don't need to perpetuate, that whole mess. And so Blue Cross Blue Shield, one of the companies this man lobbies for, Penn East Pipeline, another, and thirdly, he lobbies for the country of Qatar in the Middle East. So, um, and they say there's no conflict of interest and there's nothing illegal about it. And so, technically they're probably right, but it doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good. So, yeah, we have the majority of the population wants single payer health care, but the two corporate mainstream parties do not. And we have to address that.
Absolutely. Um, if you want to leave our viewers with something to share this or send it to people in New Jersey, or throw you a few dollar donation, anything like that, what do you want to leave with our viewers? Especially, uh, you know, that they shouldn't fear voting third party. What's a good message to leave them with?
Vote, vote your principles. Look at the policies, not the party. Look at the candidate that best represents your policies and what you believe in. Know that as Greens, we're not going anywhere. You could see even with my own campaign that I last ran 20 years ago and I'm right back, older, wiser, and more radicalized. I'm not going anywhere after the campaign. We're going to continue to do this work. And I know that there are good Greens running in Pennsylvania. And I think those of us, those Greens in New Jersey and those Greens in Pennsylvania, ought to do more collaborative work together to strengthen what we're doing. People can go to my webpage at hoffmanrus.com, and then they do, I think it's /donations if they want to make a donation to our campaign. We've taken no money from corporations or political action committees, just a bunch of small donations to pay for things like lawn signs and campaign literature. If you want to get involved, we're going to be doing canvassing all next week because we only have 12 days or 10, 11 days left before the elections. We're going to be doing get out the vote phone calls, and anyone who wants to help with phone calls. I guess you could email me for more info too at Hoffman for Us. That's all the letters, Hoffman, FOR us, 2018 at gmail.com. So that if you want to get involved and volunteer, you can do that. You can also volunteer from our website. But I think most of all, we're running out of time. We're running out of time to make these changes. And if I hear another person say to me, first we got to get rid of all the Republicans, and then we'll get rid of the Democrats that aren't doing what we want them to do. So what are you talking about? 4 years, 8 years, 12 years? How long? And I've been at it now for 20 years in the electoral arena. And every 2 years or 4 years, it's the same thing. This is not the time. This is not the time. There's another reason not to vote third party. But we really need to start voting for what we want in order for us to get it. As if we say, well, this is what we want, but I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Senator Menendez, we're never going to get what we want. We have to, I have one image I can leave you with.
Excuse me.
Bless you. It came to me the other day when I was down, Diane and I were both at the Women's March on the Pentagon with Cindy Sheehan, and the Pentagon was our backdrop. And I was interviewed by somebody, and this idea came to me. You know, fly paper, and a fly gets into the fly paper, and then they try to fly out, the more stuck they get. Well, in some ways, I'm looking at the fly paper as the two-party system, and if you just stay in that two-party system and keep thinking that a vote here, a vote there, a strategic vote there, is going to get you out of the fly paper, you're sadly mistaken. I mean, I understand why people do this. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. We have to get bold. We have to get outside of that box, off the fly paper. We have to let ourselves fly into something new and take a risk and join with other like-minded people, because there are a lot of us out here. We see it all the time when we're in the streets or or knocking on doors, you wouldn't know it talking to Democrats, the vote shaming Democrats. You wouldn't know it. But people out there are ready, and I mean, you supported Bernie Sanders. It was amazing to see when he was running in 2016, all the young folks, all the activists, all the people who came out. I think he probably was surprised too at how large the crowds were. And certainly Hillary was surprised because she had to, I mean, they had to put the kibosh on that somehow.
Yeah, they did a good cropping job of for her crowd sizes.
Mhm. Yeah, so the sentiment is out there. Even the people who voted, many of the people who voted for Donald Trump came from a similar starting place. They went in the wrong direction, in my opinion. But there are a lot of discontent with the economy, with wages, with jobs, with, we don't have a living wage. We don't have tuition-free college. We don't have people. I talked to some homeless people in Newark, and I know I'm going on a bit, but
Oh, that's okay.
the homeless shelter in Newark costs $250,000 a year to maintain. And a few months ago, maybe 6 weeks or 2 months ago, came the notice that this homeless shelter that had 200 units in it was closing down. And I went with some other Greens, and we did what we could to provide some help with distributing food and stuff like that. But I then I was given permission to interview a couple of the people, and one of the women, homeless women, had an advanced degree in biochemistry because she was wanting to do research on cancer and finding a cure. She spoke 3 or 4, maybe 5 foreign languages, but she was homeless because between the cost of rent, the monthly cost of rent, and the monthly cost of her student loan debt, she couldn't make ends meet. And so she was talking about that. The homeless shelter was going to close, $250,000 to keep it open, while the city of Newark was considering to give a $2.5 billion tax break to Jeff Bezos of Amazon to build a distribution center in Newark. So we have money for war, we have money for billionaires, but we don't have money to keep a homeless shelter up. We don't have money to help people who are trying to do well, getting a good education, but racked up huge debt. The priorities are wrong, and that's another part of my message, that until we take a stand for our priorities, we're not going to change them. And if you're anti-war, you can't vote for somebody who's pro-war. I mean, you may, but in my opinion, we're not going to advance towards an anti-war position if we keep voting for people who are pro-war.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely check out these comments. I'm just skimming, but people are definitely feeling what you're saying.
Okay,
And just so you guys know, the more you share, especially with New Jersey, the more people get exposure to these candidates, which is the number one thing that we do this show for. So definitely get the word out. Thank you guys for watching. I have another show at midnight Eastern with Rodolfo Cortez. He's a doctor in California. He is running green as well. He's a great guy, so he'll be coming on later tonight. Thank you so much, Madeline. You are awesome. I'm so glad you were recommended.
Thank you, Joy, for giving me this opportunity. I'm really grateful for it, and it was great to talk to you and get to know you some. Yeah.
You as well. I hope to see you around. I'm in Harrisburg, and we're doing the Green Party convention thing next month.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay. So
It'll be
maybe
here.
you're
I believe it's the 17th.
of November?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. If I'm in the country, I will be there. There's an international conference in Dublin to
Ooh,
close U.S. foreign military bases, and that's that very same weekend. And I may wind up going there, and I may not.
well, I,
Um,
I went to Dublin last year, and I think you'll enjoy
yeah.
it. On the free time, on a more happy respect.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go, but I haven't had a chance, and but we'll see because the campaign is taking up virtually every ounce of my energy and every minute of my time, and I wish I had 2 more months to campaign because there's opportunities you have as a candidate that you don't as a regular green. But we're
Sure.
going to do what we can to build on that because it's so necessary. And so I hope to see you all in Pennsylvania in November because we're just right across the border and there's a lot of things that affect us both equally. So,
Absolutely. Well,
yep,
thank you once more. Best of
you're
luck with
welcome.
everything. And
Thank
again,
you.
guys, thank you for watching. I adore you all. I love seeing your comments. And again, hopefully see you tonight at midnight Eastern and
Oh,
9 p.m. California time.
yeah. I mean, you'll love Rodolfo. He's great. Met him at the
It'll be
in
a great
Utah.
show.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Thank you
Thanks
so
very much,
much.
Joy. You're welcome. Okay. Good night.
Good night.